I cannot be silent.
Back when Eisenhower was the president, golf courses is where most of his time was spent. So I never really listened to what the president said, because in general I believed that the general was politically dead. But he always seemed to know when the muscles were about to be flexed, because I remember him saying something, mumbling something about a military-industrial complex.
As I have walked among the desperate, rejected, and angry young men, I have told them that Molotov cocktails and rifles would not solve their problems. I have tried to offer them my deepest compassion while maintaining my conviction that social change comes most meaningfully through nonviolent action. But they ask, and rightly so, what about Vietnam? They ask if our home nation wasn't using massive doses of violence to solve its problem, to bring about the changes it wanted. Their questions hit home, and I knew that I could never again raise my voice against the violence of the oppressed in the ghettos without having first spoken clearly to the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today, my own government. For the sake of those boys, for the sake of this government, for the sake of the hundreds of thousands trembling under our violence, I cannot be silent.
Each one reach one, each one time.
I cannot be silent.
Nobody can do everything, but everybody can do something. Everyone must play a part. Everyone's got to go to work. Work for peace. Spirit say work.
I cannot be silent.
Empowering the body, mind, and spirit. This is We Cannot Be Silent with Phil Restino and Larry Pinkney.
Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to another edition of We Cannot Be Silent. My name is Phil Restino. I'm one of the co-hosts. My partner, Larry Pinkney, is the other co-host. Larry, are you there?
Yeah, I'm your partner in crime. Go ahead and say it. No, yes, I'm definitely here.
Oh, that's great. And tonight we're lucky to have some guests from San Diego, Ted and Nelisse Muga from San Diegans for 9/11 Truth. Can we get a hello from you, Ted, and a hello from you, Nelisse?
Okay, here's a hello from Ted.
Hi,
okay, we
here.
Read you both loud and clear. Okay, and we've got Dave controlling all the buttons and knobs here, so I guess we're ready to go. For the listeners, Larry Pinkney and myself do this program once a month with the United We Strike, United We Win radio marathon, and Dave Corso does a wonderful job with all the technical stuff behind the scenes here, and we do what we can to muck it up. But I should just speak for myself in that respect. But the name of the show is We Cannot Be Silent, and we started our first program, the January 2012 episode, on January 15th, the actual birthday of Dr. Martin Luther King, and it was from his Beyond Vietnam, A Time to Break Silence speech given on 4 April 1967 in the Riverside Church in Harlem, New York City. That's what we got the name of the show from. And briefly, my background is I'm a member of Veterans for Peace. I'm a peacetime veteran. I didn't come of age until after Vietnam, but I did serve in the Army. And when the wars with this war on terror, and more specifically the invasion of Iraq, started, I was quite concerned and I didn't have a job, so I had time to be on the internet, and I found out about Veterans for Peace after I saw their rally in Washington, D.C., calling for the impeachment of George Bush, and that was on 16 June 2005, and this fella, Mike Ferner, who's served at various positions at the national leadership, he said these words which really hit me. It is not only our responsibility as citizens, but as Veterans for Peace member put it, is our sworn duty to uphold the Constitution and impeach this criminal president. And that just sold me right there. I looked up Veterans for Peace and called them up and asked if I could join, and they said yes, and got a chapter started, and we've been calling for this accountability ever since. And it was with the impeachment issue that I came to meet Larry Pinkney. Larry Pinkney is a veteran of the Black Panther Party and columnist for the Black Commentator as well as Intrepid Report. He does a weekly column for both publications, blackcommentator.com, intrepidreport.com. And we were still pushing this impeachment issue because after the Democrat Obama got in office in January 2009, no longer was Veterans for Peace calling for impeachment for these crimes. So our chapter in Central Florida had to pick up the ball and run with it. And finally, last summer, July of 2011, we were once again pushing the resolution. And I saw a column on the Black Commentator, is it time to impeach Obama? And it was written by this fellow, Larry Pinkney. And boy, did he make the case for yes, it was. And I looked him up, emailed him, and the rest is history. And but Larry could probably tell you a little bit more about himself, and I'll shut up and allow Larry to do that right now. Larry?
Well, you pretty much said it all, Phil. As you said, I write for an editorial board member and columnist for the Black Commentator, blackcommentator.com, and associate editor with intrepidreport.com. And I am a political prisoner, having spent 10 years in prison as a result of having been a target of COINTELPRO, the counterintelligence program. And, that's really enough about me. The bottom line is let's move on to the show.
Okay, you bet, Larry. And I just wanted to get all that out for the folks who just tuning in for the first time. And we do have a great show lined up for tonight. And there's a group out in San Diego, San Diegans for 9/11 Truth. And I've been watching some of their stuff on the internet for years now, and they are a great example to anyone who wants to get off their butt and try to do something and make a difference. We have tonight with us Commander R.E. Ted Muga and his wife Nelisse from San Diego. And I do want to give an introduction to Ted here. Ted graduated from SMU with a degree in civil engineering in 1961. Shortly after that, he joined the Navy. In June 1967, Ted was stationed in the South China Sea as a naval aviator, flying off the USS Oriskany. That's the same ship that John McCain had flown off earlier. And after getting out of active duty, Ted served active duty from 1963 to 68. He then joined Pan Am Airlines, piloting 707s around the world. In 1991, Ted retired from Pan Am, and he spent the last few years with them flying out of West Berlin. Ted did stay in the reserves for 20 years, retiring as a naval commander. And that's Ted's military and professional background, but since then he's been doing a heck of a lot of work with Veterans for Peace, pilots for 9/11 Truth. He's part of Patriots I'm sorry I messed that up, but Ted will be able to tell you. And his wife, Nelisse, is one of the founding members of San Diegans for 9/11 Truth, and that website is sd911truth.org. Please type that in and go take a look at it. So with that, I'd like to introduce you to Ted and Nelisse, and you two can decide who wants to start off first and tell us a little bit more about yourselves. Thank you.
Okay, Phil, this is Ted. Are you hearing me okay?
I'm hearing you okay.
Okay, here we go. I'll just give you a brief background. I was out in the Gulf of Tonkin in 1967 when the USS Liberty was when they attempted to blow the USS Liberty out of the water. And it was not until about 5 years ago that I even heard about the event. What I'm trying to emphasize is the ability that the people in charge of all these atrocities that are going on in this country, the ability that they have to keep these events covered up. And that's very parallel to one of the issues that we are covering here in San Diego with our San Diegans for 9/11 Truth, is the events of 9/11, when the Twin Towers in New York were destroyed, along with Building 7. It has been covered up. The major media outlets have not covered it, and they will not cover it. And so what we are trying to do is inform the public as best as we can to all of these events that affect the future of this country and the world in the way of false flag events. And they are events that come up that lead us into a more destructive ways than we could ever imagine.
Yes, indeed, and that's amazing. Here you are, Ted, a naval aviator, serving overseas during a time of war. At the same time, one of your fellow naval vessels is getting attacked and almost sunk off the coast of Israel and Egypt out there, and you don't even know about it until 40 years later, and that just goes to show how much we've been misled and misinformed by this media, and how complete it is. But at the same time, we're finding out now, and it's because of people like yourselves and Larry and United We Win that have become the media themselves. Yes, we can complain and point out what's wrong with the court, as Larry calls it, the corporate stream media. That's all well and good, but what are we going to do about it? And it's I'm just so thrilled to see so many people actually doing something about it. And you folks tomorrow night will be showing the film Dead in the Water, which is a BBC documentary on the June 8, 1967 attack on the USS Liberty. And I know that Nelisse has been involved in setting that up. Nelisse, would you be able to tell us a little bit more?
September of 2005, our group, San Diegans for 9/11 Truth, and of course we started off small, and we have about 1,300 people on our email list that we send notices to. Each month we have a public meeting. We average about 100 people there, and we have decided that this is the 45th anniversary this year. As we all know, June of this year, it's been 45 years that basically the survivors of the Liberty were sworn to silence. I mean, we're educators, and we're just, and if you look at the attacks of the Liberty, it's very similar to 9/11 in the fact that the perpetrators knew that the cover-up and the media and the U.S. government that they were totally safe. In other words, the attack could go on because the cover-up and the censorship was in place. And, of course, if you look at our history, for the last 100 years or so, that's a pattern. So we wanted to honor the survivors and show the liberty. And Phil, we have a great packet here from you that we're going to be distributing tomorrow night. A lot of information, along with you sent us maybe about 100 videos of a film called Blood in the Water, which is basically an earlier version of the film we'll be showing tomorrow night.
Yes, and it's so important to get these DVDs out to folks, because that is something that they can plug right into their TV or their laptops or whatever, and that did the trick for me out here. And us, same thing. Somebody handed us a DVD in 2005 about the 9/11 fraud, and it changed my world. And ever since then, our Veterans for Peace chapter's been all about exposing the fraud of 9/11, because the wars are in the name of 9/11, and
it's all connected. Every false flag is basically the results would be unnecessary wars, enemies that we create. It's as I said, it's a real pattern. We also have a trio, 3 wonderful people that come down from the LA area. I think you know Mike and Ann Chicky, and also Gail, and they come down once a month. The first week of every month, we have a beautiful outreach in front of the USS Midway. I think you mentioned we have a little slideshow on our website, and it's an art display. It's maybe a dozen large posters, everything from pictures of the Pentagon with no plane, pictures of what happened in Pennsylvania, the towers basically being destroyed, certainly not by jet fuel, along with the cost of war. And we're not talking about the monetary as much as the lives and the destruction and what the victims right now of Afghanistan and Iraq, how they are suffering. And people are actually drawn to these posters, and then we have a little table that they can come up to us and get information, and we answer questions, but mostly we want to listen to see where folks are coming from. And we've always had excellent, positive responses. Obviously, there are people that will walk by and not bother to come up, but they seem to look at the pictures or read some of the literature. So it's that planting seeds. It's that slowly waking up so many Americans who have been so put to sleep by the advent of the television. Of course, is probably the biggest propaganda machine they have, or mind control machine, whatever you want to call it.
One of the false flags, the big false flag back in before Vietnam, was the Tonkin Gulf incident. I mean, that is one of the big false flags that we need to also try to expose. And they have actually been exposed through the final memoirs of both McNamara and LBJ. They've acknowledged that there was no attack on any of our ships out there.
Yes, after 3.4 million Vietnamese were killed, as well as 58,000 of your comrades in arms, and that's right out of the mouth of Robert McNamara himself, who was, I believe he was a bomb damage assessment officer in World War II, meaning he was able to calculate the damage of the weapons on the enemy. Yes, and thank God that this information is getting out, because if we don't know this history, we will repeat it. Before we get to, I know Larry's probably got a bunch of questions, but Nelisse, you mentioned the displays that you have, and Mike Chicky, who's a wonderful photographer who comes down once a month from L.A., if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Well, in fact, you mentioned a word, enemy, and sort of the hairs on my neck, now that I've learned so much, are raised. The enemy is certainly not the victims of our bombs. The enemy are the people that create these wars, create these false flags. And so I just wanted to mention that. But yes, Mike Chicky, not only does he and his wife and Dale come down, and he's an amazing photographer, he not only takes our events, he takes the Veterans for Peace are quite often in the same area that we are in. He takes pictures of them, of the parades, of so many good. We have a wonderful activist group here, Peace and Justice, and we basically are all intertwined because we're all doing our way. We respect each other, and people can just sort of concentrate. We concentrate on 9/11 as a tool because we're living in the aftermath of 9/11, and every administrator and every congressman, as they continue to pull the our civil rights away and continue to have more and more homeland security everywhere, they're using 9/11. So we use 9/11, which is a very easy tool to provide someone, as you say, a video or something to just get their curiosity engaged, and to so we're very basic with our outreach. If people have more questions, we're fortunate because not only Ted is there at the Midway, we have other Veterans for Peace there. We have a lieutenant colonel who is an accident investigator and recently retired as a member of our group, a very active member of our group. In fact, he sort of has he's sort of in charge of the actually the outreaches and organizes the rest of us to be there. So anyway, I hope I didn't talk too much there.
Oh, God, no. And I did want to tie this into Larry, but before getting there, for the folks listening, if you want to see a wonderful 4-minute YouTube video of the display and everything that the folks out here in San Diego do, go to youtube.com and then type in 10-year ANNIV, ANNIV, and then it's got the squiggly, and then SD 911 Truth Outreach, and you'll get a 4-minute video and the very end shows a young veteran in a wheelchair with his legs blown off, looking at the 9/11 lie, all the displays there, and these soldiers are dying in vain. They're getting mutilated in vain because they are dying for a lie, and just as the troops in Vietnam did. And the other thing you mentioned, the Constitution, that's what the soldiers swear an oath to defend, and it's been shredded in the name of 9/11s. And Larry, I'm going to switch it over to you because you often speak about the root, getting to the root of things, and I was wondering if you could pick it up here and touch on that a little.
Yeah, sure. First, what I'd like to do for our audience with both of our guests is would one of you define, I mean, I understand that we know these terms, but I'd like for you to define in, maybe 2 or 3 or 4 sentences or less, when you use the term false flag, what exactly do you?
Let's see, Nelisse, do you have a good definition for that?
Well, sure. It's and in fact, we feel, and this is how we're going to introduce the film on the USS Liberty, that was an attempted false flag. In other words, are the people that they wanted to blame that event on were not the people that perpetrated the crime. That what they do is that in order to start a war, there is some kind of an attack, and the people that they want to blame, they immediately start the mind control of the people, because people don't want to go to war. I mean, there's some examples, and it even starts with the sinking of the Maine, to hell with Spain, the sinking of the Maine. And that began a war. Hitler did this. He burnt, he had the Reichstag, the parliament, that's the German parliament building, set on fire so he could go after the people, I believe it was the communists, the people that he wanted to wage war on. I mean, it's throughout history. The Gulf of Tonkin, of course, was very successful. I mean, that's what really brought what Ted was mentioning earlier. It never happened. In fact, Stockdale, Admiral Stockdale, even wrote, and I believe in our paper here in San Diego, he was a resident of Coronado, and that the Gulf of Tonkin never happened. That was again covered up by our higher-ups. I guess that was Ted was at McNamara and Johnson.
Johnson, both.
Yeah, same characters in the USS Liberty. You know, I have heard, and I can't tell you where I heard it, but Johnson was quoted when the USS Liberty was being attacked, and they literally, there were fighter pilots going out to rescue them, and the Johnson administration called them back and saying, I want that goddamn ship at the bottom of the ocean.
For the sake of the audience, though, I know we understand this, but I want to be very clear. The USS Liberty was a United States naval vessel. It was essentially very, very lightly armed. And it was not there for armed duty by there. When we talk about this, let's say it very clearly that the USS Liberty was attacked by whom and when and with what result?
And it was attacked by the Israeli military. This has all been documented.
Right.
But it was covered up. In fact, the official story was, it was an accident.
Mistaken identity.
Yeah. They wanted to blame it on Egypt.
Right. There you go. They wanted to blame it on Egypt to bring the U.S. into the Six-Day War on the side of Israel. And the ship did not sink. And then you go into damage control. Then you go mistaken identity and all that. But to this very day, 45 years later, there's been no justice. It's been covered up.
With respect to the USS Liberty, there's an example for the sake of our listening audience. There's an example of a false flag. In other words, the United States government engaged in an atrocious act, and it was very complicitous with the Israeli forces in attacking a United States naval vessel. A number of crew members on the ship, the USS Liberty, were killed, were murdered, let's be blunt. And the objective was to sink the ship. Unfortunately for the United States government and its subterfuge, the ship did not sink, and the false flag. So then, what did they do? They covered it up, as you said, Phil, for 45 years, right up to the present. Most people, and an overwhelming amount of people, be they veterans or not, are not aware, they're not cognizant of the USS Liberty. And, you know, I'm just trying to make sure that everyone gets that very, very clear. Now, if they'll do that to veterans, what do you think they'll do to us civilians? That's a rhetorical question.
Every survivor off of that crew was called in individually and basically told that you will never repeat this incident, or you will face life in prison or worse. They had several inquiries, supposedly official inquiries, just like 9/11, but none of the survivors were allowed to testify. None of them.
Sounds like 9/11. Yep.
It sure does. Back in June of 2007, a gentleman, Ward Boston Jr., he was the senior legal counsel for the Naval Court of Inquiry, and it was his job at the time to uncover the truth about this particular bombing incident. And he was specifically told that him, along with Admiral Kit, were there and they were to sit down, and they were told that they were not interested in the fact that it was a political matter, and that we cannot talk about it, and that we had to put a lid on it. And that is what the senior counsel, was a Navy captain, and this is in June the 8th of 2007, he wrote an article in the San Diego Union paper, and it was published. And it's a great article if anyone wants to go to find. But he tells specifically that everything that he did at that time, that his actions were basically a cover-up of the event of the USS Liberty.
Larry, I'd like to tie this into your most recent article on Intrepid Report, because these false flags history continues to repeat itself, but we're in a time now where we've got this internet, the DVDs, we've got the ability to around the world and share this information. And Larry, your most recent piece in IntrepidReport.com is Acquiescence, a Recipe for Disaster. And there comes a time when we have to stop going along with this crap. And Larry and I, for folks who haven't heard our show before, we're very much about trying to get folks to free themselves from this false left-right, Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative divide. Because as long as we play that game and find fault with our fellows, as opposed to common ground and common interest, we will never join together in strong enough numbers to stop this crap from repeating itself. And what do you say about this, Larry, with your recent Acquiescence, a Recipe for Disaster, and how do you apply it to now and to the madness that continues to get worse and worse every time as we fight with each other, left versus right?
Well, I'm going to quote directly from the article because I think it speaks for itself. I said in the article that the fact is that the misleadership of both the so-called political left and the so-called political right do not want ordinary people, that's ordinary, everyday black, white, brown, red, and yellow people, to directly communicate, directly communicate with and to one another. Because if this were to be done, it would become obvious that this above-mentioned misleadership is what? It's a fraud. It's been on perpetuating and maintaining the systemic fake left-right paradigm. Why? In order to hold on, for them to hold on to what? To political and economic power at the expense of whom? At the expense of everyday, ordinary people. So, and I said it is in this way that ordinary, everyday people have been systemically programmed, sort of like laboratory rats, to acquiesce to being perpetually manipulated, dominated, and quite frankly, cynically controlled, end of quote. So, you know, whether we're talking about the Gulf of Tonkin so-called incident, I don't even like the word incident because I think these things happen with such regularity that they're not incidents anymore. I think of an incident as something that just happens every now and then. But these things go on constantly and perpetuated constantly. But I remember as a young person hearing about the false flag as far as the Gulf of Tonkin. In fact, I actually remember hearing Lyndon Baines Johnson talking his nonsense about the ship that had been attacked, blah, 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 and it all turned out to be a lie. In fact, I can go back further to President Dwight D. Eisenhower. I don't know if you all remember this, but the U-2 incident, and I remember it very well, hearing the U.S. government saying, oh, no, we had a spy plane. We were not over Russia. No, it was just a weather balloon. And, of course, the Russians turned around and said, well, explain to us who this guy is, Gary Powers, who happens to have CIA identification on him. Oh, yes, and by the way, he's alive and well. We have it. So, I mean, these kinds of things to perpetuate either war, direct war, at the expense of everyday people, or to make sure that tensions remain high so that the people who make money off of war, whether we're talking about General Dynamics, Lockheed Corporation, Boeing, et cetera, GE, these people in heavy quotation marks, these people continue to make millions and billions and trillions of dollars of blood money. So, whether we're talking about the USS Liberty, whether we're talking about the Gulf of Tonkin, whether we're talking about the U-2, these things go on and on and on. And the only way that we can stop these things is to get the information out there, get everyday, just plain ordinary people to understand that they/we are the guinea pigs in this laboratory. And it's time for us to say no to this asylum. It's basically an asylum where we're being, when I say an asylum, I'm speaking, of course, euphemistically, but an asylum where we are being, everyday people, are being controlled and manipulated to the whims of those who make all those trillions of dollars of blood money. And when I think of the USS Liberty, for example, having had the opportunity to speak to Ron, you know what I'm talking about, Bill.
Yes.
Who is a survivor of that, and the horror that was experienced on that ship at the hands, really, of his own government working complicitously with the Israelis, as it turned out. But, this government will work with anybody as long as it's to the advantage of the blood-sucking corporate elite. And in any event, when I think of these things that go on and on and on, I realize every day even more that it's important for us to get it out to everyday people of all colors, of both genders and of all colors, that we are being pimped, P-I-M-P-E-D, pimped, blood-sucked, used, manipulated, divided, and controlled. And this is why I'm delighted to have, our guests on this evening. But that's what I have to say, Phil.
Well,
Larry,
thank you.
Larry, could I just interrupt here a second? I just want you to know that Ted and I, everything you just said is 100% the way we feel. And your mention, first of all, as we know, Democrats and Republicans, two-headed snake. There's no right, there's no left. It's all to divide us. The idea we have no mass transit. They don't want people together. We have no plazas. Mothers are working. Everybody's either stuck in traffic trying to pick up their kids. The students are in debt. So the more they keep us on that little wheel spinning, we're not able to communicate. And this is, again, what we love in front of the Midway, because we're non-threatening. And people come to this particular area, the Midway being a museum, and we have people from all over the world. And, of course, most of the rest of the world is very aware. In fact, we get all kinds of comments from, oh, there are a few smart Americans too. What took you so long too? And many people thanking, including us, military families, thank you for being here. Thank you for volunteering and being here. But everything you said, I mean, the last two administrations can, Democrat, Republican, it doesn't matter. We are at the bottom of the pyramid, all of us. The banksters, or whatever you want to call them, the elite, which you said. Everything you say. Ted, do you agree? He's at the other end of the house.
No, one of the problems that we have is they are able to use human nature to keep us under control, and that is to divide us with these ridiculous issues that keep us going against each other, and they continually bring up more problems all the time, so that we're continually distracted from what is really going on in this world, and we just don't have the time, or the majority of the people just don't have the time. And the other thing is, and the employment problem. It is unbelievable. The percentage, especially here in the San Diego, is all with the military-industrial complex.
Horrible.
The people that are employed, in others, to ensure their continued employment, they must be willing to close their eyes to the truth. And we have a real problem down here. and not to mention the rest of the public. It's just like the old Chinese proverb, you cannot wake up a person that is pretending to be asleep. And this is as we provide the information out there, and this is basically what we don't approach these people, or when they come to us, we're not really trying to change their mind or to help them form their opinion. What we are doing is allowing them the opportunity to share information that we have researched and uncovered, and hopefully it will create a spark of interest where they will, in fact, take their own actions to process this information in their own brain, and hopefully come up with a rational and logical opinion or solution. But other than that, you cannot do anything. In other words, you cannot tell someone the truth. A person has to realize the truth on their own. And so all we do is, sometimes we say we plant seeds. That's basically what we're doing. We're providing them with information that hopefully they will digest and take into account. It's an uphill battle because we're fighting the corporate media, and I'm down here. We just cannot emphasize how important that is. The corporate media is so powerful. It controls these people. It's a circus and bread effect. They provide them with entertainment and this GMO poison food that they're feeding you at all of the Jack in the Boxes and the fast food places. It's an uphill battle with these people.
In fact, I want to just comment what Ted said about our military down here. Our newspaper, which keeps getting resold, and we only have one paper in town, the Union Tribune, and as Ted mentioned, 5 years ago they actually published this amazing editorial by Ward Boston, basically exposing the USS Liberty. That's how many of us here 5 years ago knew about it. It was the 40th anniversary, and this was passed out among us. But our union now glorifies every single day. On the cover is some hero, military. We have embedded journalists here locally with the heroes in Afghanistan, and they even have every Sunday about 5 to 6 pages, a special edition of military. So we're being militarized just big time here. And as Ted said, so many jobs are based on war.
We try, when we talk to military people, what we try to tell them is that when you're in the military, you're a pawn. Believe me, you're at the lowest level of a pawn.
But we don't say it like that.
You're just following instructions. The concept of critical thinking is not encouraged at all. But what we try to do is tell them that here we are attacking and occupying countries that are essentially defenseless countries. These countries do not have massive military complexes of any kind, Navy, Air Force, just a little army on the inside. But these are essentially defenseless countries. Unfortunately for them, they have a lot of natural resources that are big national corporations, oil that they won't. And this is the situation we're sort of getting into. Our military is actually providing protection for the big corporations to go into these countries and extract their natural resources. These countries are not a threat to us at all, any more than Vietnam was a threat to us, not at all. And yet we are able to convince the people and provide events that put fear into their mind, and through human nature get them to go along with the government administrations.
But, if I could touch on that, Ted, and take it one step further, what's enabling the government and the media to do that? And I believe, from what I've seen in the anti-war movement since I got involved in 2004, 2005, that a lot of this is being done with left cover. Once the anti-war movement, once the Democrat got into office, it pretty much dropped the ball. And we're not consistent in our public call for accountability. what do you see there in the anti-war 9/11 truth activist community where we're fragmented and finding differences with each other? And how do you see that as enabling this militaristic madness to continue? What do you make of that, Ted?
Well, war is very profitable. And once you put in profits into the equation, they can pretty much do anything they want to. Wars are very profitable, and we've been continually at war. I mean, think about the Cold War. While that was not a military action, we were spending money faster than you could ever imagine. It was a war, nevertheless.
But I mean, I'm sorry, I meant those of us who sign up and hold ourselves out to be people who know this, and we hold ourselves out to be an organization or a group that is, the purpose is to stop this and bring the attention to the masses. I see that in some instances, we're not only not doing that, but we're providing cover.
Phil, I'd like to talk about that. First of all,
Thanks.
You know that the media is totally controlled. We have not a free press. We don't have journalists. You know, the guys at the top tell their employees, basically, they're almost fed the stories, what they have to report. The left gatekeepers are probably our biggest problems. I'm talking about public radio, public television.
Right.
Pardon?
I said absolutely right.
Yeah, because I used to always turn on NPR. I turn it on now, and, you know, once you're down that old rabbit hole, you can you see everything very, very clear. And I believe that Obama was placed in office as Bush was placed in office. Bush was placed to be the sheriff in town, you know, to be someone that we hated. Obama was to be someone that we loved, and they were both placed there by the elite, continuing to separate. Many of us, and the public are opening their eyes. I don't really know anybody as close friends that subscribe to our paper, that listen to NPR anymore, that listen to Bill Moyers. We listen to Democracy Now!, of course not for anything about 9/11 or the USS Liberty, nothing really, you know, unfortunately, Amy Goodman is told, again, what her boundaries are. You know, so it's all on purpose. I think that on purpose, like in Vietnam, there was a lot more coverage. They learned their lesson from Vietnam in many ways. The media, what we're fed on television, the excitement of a Super Bowl, the excitement of American Idol, whatever. There is nothing out there, and it's all intentional. It's all intentional.
But Larry, thank you, Nelisse. But Larry, maybe you can. You're hearing me, right, Larry? I'm talking about within the activism groups ourselves, not the media, not the so-called alternative media that is always watching its own collection plate. And maybe you can rephrase what I'm trying to say, Larry, about.
Well, all I can say, Phil, is I'll just have to be direct. You know how I am, and just say it like it is. Bottom line is the so-called left, the so-called progressives, the so-called liberals, you know, have shown themselves, have proven themselves, by that I mean I'm talking about the leadership, or more accurately, the misleadership of the so-called left, so-called progressives, so-called liberals. The misleadership has shown itself to be really nothing more than collaborators, like the French collaborators with the Nazis in occupied France, like the collaborators, the Jewish collaborators in Germany itself with the Nazis, collaborators with the running dogs who are, in point of fact, really getting trillions of dollars of blood money at the expense of everyday people. And, you know, let's call it for what it is. These people are hypocrites. They've used the color thing, Obama. Oh, he's black, I love him, he's black. You know, where Dr. King said, just, you know, so a few short years ago, you judge a person by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. And if we were to judge any of these despicable creatures out here by the content of their character, they would all be put out of the box, and that includes Obama, the Democrats, and the Republicans, all of them. And the left, the so-called left, left need only apply, I think you like to say, Phil, are giving cover. They are giving cover, okay, in very large measure. They are giving cover to the bloodletting that is going on right now and has been going on, frankly, for decades and decades and decades. But the bloodletting that's going on right now in Syria, in Libya, and you name it. I mean, it's all over the world, both economically and militarily. And let's call it like it really is. And we have to be honest with ourselves. I come out of the left. I'm a former Black Panther. I come right out of the left, and that's one of the reasons I am outraged at seeing the obvious betrayal of the people by these so-called progressives and these so-called leftists. And I applaud, you know, both of our guests and the sisters and brothers who work with them. I will say this. The upside is this. I heard just last week, and this came from the corporate stream media itself, that less and less and less people are paying any attention to them.
Yeah.
And you know what? That's great. Because if nothing else, more and more people are beginning to realize that it's all a bunch of you-know-what, and that they really need to be paying attention, as they said in that old movie, The Wizard of Oz. They do need to be paying attention to the man behind the curtain. So I do think there's great hope. And I think that what our guests are doing is fantastic, and more important than being fantastic, it is imperative.
Larry, I think Ted would agree with me. Would we love you as a guest speaker? Everything that you said is so, again, right on, and you say it so well. You would be an excellent, excellent guest speaker, and there's a lot of people that are beginning to open their eyes to just exactly what you said, exactly. And once you do, you can't close them. You know, you can't.
That's right. That's right.
No turning back. And I just wanted to also, if time, ask Ted. Ted, being a member of Veterans for Peace and 9/11 Truth, what I was trying to get to earlier with my question was, there should not be two groups or movements, and this is my point. You know, this was done very early on. If you go back to the early 9/11 Truth conferences before Bush's war and all that, you see the same anti-war people. You see Medea Benjamin, you see Ray McGovern, you see a lot of these people back then. But since then, there was a 9/11 Truth movement, and then there was an anti-war movement. And when did questioning the one reason given for the war become a separate movement? And this is what I'm getting at, Ted. Your thoughts?
Well, I'm not really sure when they become separate, but let me tell you what our sort of philosophy is about our San Diegans for 9/11 Truth. We're trying to find an issue that will wake people up. And just recently, because so many of our members in our 9/11 group are also part of Veterans for Peace group. I mean, just last week I went to the Veterans for Peace movement, and we talk about essentially the same things. But
Kenny, we talked about our showing of the Liberty and gave out Liberty information.
There you go. And so the USS Liberty may in fact be the key to wake people up. We're not really sure what that magic key is going to be. We've been talking about 9/11 for all of these years, it may be a little too much for people to understand.
In our particular case, the leadership of the Veterans for Peace are very much on board with 9/11. We had a citizens grand jury a few years ago, and actually
Yes.
the chairman of Veterans for Peace was one of the jurors. However, I think that what you're saying is difficult because many men join Veterans for Peace, and they would just be, it would be a huge,
Devastating.
sad, devastating awakening if they realized all the years that they sacrificed was for the same people that have created all, again, these false flags, 9/11 being the last one. But we reach out to them very gently. That's why on purpose, a few days ago, Ted and Dave, both members of our group, both members of Veterans for Peace, very politely at the end of it, announced the USS Liberty, announced the flyer, and there wasn't one person there that wasn't reading that flyer from one end to the other. So that's sort of how we're trying to do it out here, Phil.
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned that. You're such a great example of your displays, the once a month displays. Please look at this video, folks, on YouTube.com, and it's called the 10-year ANNIV squiggly SD 911 Truth Outreach. It's a 4-minute video of the display these folks do out in front of the USS Midway, and I like their approach. They put it out there and they let people come up and see for themselves. It's not force-fed, and any way we can learn to bring the folks together like you have been. That's a great point you made about the veterans who gave so much to try to swallow all of this. Some of them can't, and to be gentle. Yeah. Thank you for that insight.
I've got an easier website. Just go to SD 911 Truth, and that video is part of our website. You just scroll down, you'll find it, SD911truth.org.
I cannot be silent.
Nobody can do everything, but everybody can do something. Everyone must play a part. Everyone's got to go to work.